Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to the channel for this installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open, the floor is yours. What do you guys want to talk about? That is what we are here to discuss today. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, back from Las Vegas, and good to have you guys here. We're going to be talking about a few things, but by the way, before we get started into too much, I know not all of you are wrestling fans, which is totally fine. But I don't know how many of you guys saw that today was the big AEW huge pay-per-view event in Wembley Stadium in London. And Nigel McGinness made his return after I think like a 10, 11, 12-year hiatus from professional wrestling and got to perform in front of, his home crowd, and the pop was great. And this was us. That's me and Ann with Nigel and Corey. This was us a couple of weeks ago at the John Williams concert. For those of you who don't know, Nigel and Ann's best friend, Kaori, they've been dating for, I think, like 5 years now. I think they've been together for about 5 years now. So, couldn't be prouder of the guy. I know. By the way, Nigel's a great magician, too. He's a great magician. And he does magic shows now. Whenever, like, there's a big wrestling event somewhere, he goes and does a magic show. His magic show is incredible. But I'll tell you what, I know how passionate the guy is about wrestling. I know how it was one of the biggest heartbreaks of his life that he had to step away from wrestling because of his injuries. But so good to see that dude back in the ring. And I thought for a 12-year absence, I thought that dude did damn good. I thought he did damn good. So anyway, congratulations to Nigel, and hope you guys enjoyed AEW All In. All right, look, I've been dreading this for 24 hours. I have to tell you guys about and I'm being serious, I have to tell you guys about a massive, massive mistake I made. So, those of you who might have tuned in yesterday, I attempted to do an open mic yesterday from Las Vegas. And it looked like, I was at the mercy of the hotel Wi-Fi, but it looked like the Wi-Fi was more than fast enough. It looked like the Wi-Fi was more than fast enough. So I started doing an open mic yesterday from Las Vegas. But about 5 to 10 minutes into the stream, I started getting a lot of comments from people saying it's choppy, the video's bad, and I looked over at my reference monitor, and they were right. The video was getting really choppy and all that kind of stuff. And I don't like making bad product for people who watch our channel or putting out, below the standards that we have. And I said, you know what, guys, if it's going to be like this, it might get even worse. We're just going to stop the stream. We only got about 10 minutes into it. I said, we're going to stop the stream and I'll redo it tomorrow. Here's the catch. This is where I made a major mistake. A mistake I should have known better. A whole bunch of people had already sent in super chats for questions on yesterday's show. And I said, because what happens is when somebody sends in a super chat, it goes into this database on YouTube, and I can just open up the database in YouTube. I said, guys, don't worry. Everybody who sent in a super chat, we've got all your questions in the database. I will answer all the questions that have already been sent in, because we had about $130, $140 worth of super chats were already sent in yesterday. And I said, don't worry. All the questions you already sent in are in the database. I'll just read them tomorrow. No problem. And that is how it would work. And sometimes bad things happen and I can blame it on YouTube. I can't blame this on YouTube. Here's the problem. Those questions will only stay in the database as long as I don't delete the video that people sent those questions in for. If I had done what I was supposed to do, which is when I was done with the stream and I knew the show was bad, if I had done what I was supposed to do and gone in and set the video to private or unlisted so nobody could see it but it was still there, all the questions would still be there. But like an idiot, not thinking, I deleted the video. I was like, oh, well, that video went badly because of the internet and everything. Delete. And here's why I should have known better. Because those of you who have been following our channel for at least a couple of years, we had a similar situation happen a couple of years ago where we were doing a stream, there was a technical issue, and instead of just setting the video to private, we deleted the video and we lost all the super chats that had come in. I had done it before. I knew better. And I don't know if it was the fact that I was in Vegas. I don't know if it was the fact that I was operating on not a lot of sleep, as you can imagine when Ann and I hit Vegas. But I didn't even think about it. I just deleted the video. And then it was late last night that it hit me. I'm like, because we were eating dinner at our favorite restaurant, and all of a sudden I went, oh no. Sure enough, I went back and I looked, and all the questions that our viewers who trust me, that I said, don't worry, guys. All the questions are safely tucked away in the database. I'll just read them tomorrow. And because our viewers trust me, thought, phew, no problem. We'll just get our questions answered tomorrow. Yeah, I let you down. I'm sorry. All the questions are gone. And it's my fault. And and what makes it triply worse is that this is the second time this has happened. Granted, it's been like the second time in 3 years, but still, it happened a couple of years ago. I knew better, and I just made the mistake. And I deeply apologize to everybody who had sent in a question. Like I said, it was about $130, $140 worth of questions sent in. So I know there's nothing I can do about it now. So here's what I am going to do. On behalf, oh, but don't you worry, I got your money. I know you were worried about that for a second, but John, did you get our money? Don't worry, don't worry. YouTube still sent me the money, or they will send me the money. I just lost the questions. So here's what I'm going to do. There's no way I can make it right to the individuals who sent in a super chat hoping to get a question answered. There's no way I can make that right because I have no record of what came in and who sent it and all that kind of stuff. I really screwed it. Okay. I really, really screwed it. So what I'm going to do instead, with your permission, is I am going to, you guys know there's an organization that we've worked with a bunch around here on the show called Feeding America. You know, if those of you guys who've watched our show for a long period of time, you know we've done a lot of work with Feeding America, or work on their behalf. So what I am going to do is I am going to take, I'll round it up to 150 because it's about $130, $140 in super chats. I'm going to take $150 today, and I'm going to send in a charitable donation on the behalf of John Campea Show viewers, and I'm going to send that $150 into Feeding America. I know that doesn't, help you if you were one of the, like, say 30, 40 people who sent in a super chat and not get your question answered. I know it doesn't help you individually. I apologize for that. But if it's okay with you, the best I think I can do, pardon me, to make up for it, is to send that money that you guys sent me, and we'll send an additional payment over to Feeding America under the name John Campea Show viewers. So again, guys, I deeply apologize. I know I've already taken up like 10 minutes of our show time just for me making excuses as to why those of you who sent in questions yesterday aren't getting them answered. I want you to know I take that very, very seriously. I want you to know that I think that's sacrosanct, and I can't even begin to tell you how badly I feel about it. But hopefully it will ease your mind a little bit knowing that the super chats you sent in will be sent off to Feeding America instead. All right. With that all down, and again, my apologies once again, guys. With that all down, let's get on to some stuff here, shall we? I want to revisit what we were talking about yesterday, because I know, we had to end yesterday's show yesterday, but I want to talk for a second about a question that one of our viewers posed to me a little bit ago, a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember exactly. But, a little while ago, one of our viewers wrote into the John Campea Show and asked, John, do you think Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars can possibly be bigger than Infinity War and Endgame? Now, at the time, I guffawed. I said, guffaw, said I. No, I mean, they're going to be big. Don't get me wrong. These are automatic billion-dollar club movies. 100% they're automatic billion-dollar club movies. They're going to be big. They're going to be huge. All that kind of stuff. But can they be as big as Infinity War and Endgame? To quote the great poet Thor, I say thee nay. No chance. No chance. The MCU is just in a different place than it was right now. And, it's just not realistic. Don't even think about it. No chance. Here's the thing. I as any rational human being, I have beliefs or I have opinions, but my beliefs and opinions are always open to be changed when I'm presented with good, solid arguments. It happens all the time. And I was reading an article in one of the trades, and I mentioned this yesterday, about how the return of Robert Downey Jr. has kind of fundamentally changed the game. It's fundamentally kind of changed the game. Because they pointed out something that I think I should have known, but I kind of was overlooking a bit, which was the fact that while there are certainly a number of people in what I call the 5% bubble. Now, when I refer to the 5% bubble, I'm talking about those of us who are so into movies that we either make shows like this one or watch shows like this one. Right? We're hardcore. And we watch movie shows, we read movie blogs, listen to movie podcasts. We're kind of hardcore. But we often forget that we are a very small minority. We represent 5% at most of the average movie-going audience. And while it may be true, and it certainly is true, that there are people within our bubble, our 5% bubble, who have grumbled and complained about, this is a terrible decision. Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Dr. Doom. That's ridiculous, right? The reality, as this article pointed out to me, is that outside of our bubble, outside of our measly little 5%, is a wider movie-going audience that is extremely pumped about this. that is very excited about the idea of Robert Downey Jr. coming back. And when you couple that with a couple of other factors, the state of at least the perceived state, the perception of the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, the momentum of the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now is drastically different. Drastically different than it was, say, just 2 months ago. Insanely different. And those of you guys know I'm still suffering with my post-viral cough, so you're going to hear me coughing through the show and having to use Halls, so I apologize for that, but it is what it is. Has to be done. I always say on this show that winning cures everything. And it's a truism that's been proven over and over and over again. But just think about it. 2 months ago, the general perception of the MCU, the momentum of the MCU, rightly or wrongly, fairly or unfairly, was the MCU is in decline. That was the general perception. The audience, be it in the 95% or the 5%, the audience was not as excited about the MCU as it had been in years past. It was in decline. How sharply in decline? Where there's a little bit of decline or massive decline, whoever you ask. But I think most people would agree that the perception was that the MCU was a bit in decline. All that kind of stuff. Well, now think about this. What a difference 6 weeks makes. Because just in the last month and a half, we had Deadpool and Wolverine come out, which was a massive smash success. Massive smash success. The #1 all-time box office R-rated film in history. And the audience loved it, and everybody loved it. Then you had their Comic-Con presentation. Huge success. Everybody across the world talked about it. Even though it was a fairly dull one, right up until the end when they brought out the Russo brothers and Robert Downey Jr., but hey, end big, and they ended big. They quickly followed that up with their D23. Again, I think D23 is a dog shit of an event, but the presentation, the Friday night presentation that they put on in that hockey arena in Anaheim was a frickin' rock concert and got everybody buzzing and everybody talking. And here's the thing. The perception now, as this article pointed out, and they were right, the perception, fairly or unfairly, has totally changed momentum. There is more excitement today for the MCU than there was 5 weeks ago. Does anybody disagree with that assessment? I'm not talking about you personally, but I mean out there in general. There is more excitement today for the MCU and the future of the MCU, whether that's merited or not. There is more excitement today than there was 5 weeks ago. There is more momentum today than there was 5 weeks ago. And I would say that the general atmosphere and emotional temperature of Marvel fans, MCU fans, today is more like the way it was in 2017 than the way it was just 3 months ago. I'm not saying it's at the same levels as it was in 2017, but I'm saying that today, the emotional temperature, the enthusiasm temperature, the general consensus about the MCU and where it's going, fairly or unfairly, now more resembles the kind of enthusiasm that we saw the Marvel Cinematic Universe had back in 2017, 2018, than what it resembled just like 3 months ago. Because 3 months ago, it wasn't exactly a party. So it brings up the question that we started this whole conversation with. Can Doomsday and Secret Wars actually be bigger than Infinity War and Endgame? And I've done a bit of a 180 on this. Because just a few weeks ago, I said, guffaw, I say thee nay. But today, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not so sure. Now, will Doomsday be as big as Endgame? No. But I think Doomsday can be as big as Infinity War or bigger. And if, and this is a giant if, it's a huge asterisk, totally understand and I totally agree, huge asterisk. But if Doomsday, if they nail it and crush it, and guys, it's the exact same team that made Civil War, Winter Soldier, Infinity War, and Endgame, so there's really not any reason to believe they won't nail it, but still, that's a big if. But if they nail Doomsday, Secret Wars could potentially be history's first $3 billion film. It all depends on how good Doomsday is. They'll all be billion-dollar films in their sleep. That's not in question. But if Doomsday crushes it, I think it's bigger. It could be bigger than Infinity War. And if Doomsday does indeed crush it, Secret Wars, we could be looking at history's first $3 billion film. I see some guys in live chats, 1% ain't happening. Okay, I'm just going to throw out there, though, that's the same thing people were telling me 8 months ago when I said Deadpool and Wolverine was going to be $1 billion film. John, you don't understand. It's R-rated. None of the other two, I keep wanting to say Daredevil. Deadpool movies were $1 billion. Zero chance, John. You don't know what you're talking about. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. But consider this. Endgame was the success that it was because it was the culmination of a 12-year, 20-plus film buildup all to that one singular moment, right? I mean, without the 12-year buildup, without the 20-plus films coming first, that movie does not make $2 billion. But it did. Now consider this. Marvel is going to attempt to now regather that momentum and add it to the build-up of Doomsday and ultimately Secret Wars. That Infinity War and Endgame are going to be a part of the build-up to Secret Wars. Now, whether they're going to be able to pull it off or not successfully, that's another up for debate kind of question. All right? That's definitely not a given. But all I'm saying is, I'm not sitting here telling you definitively that Doomsday will beat Infinity War and Secret Wars will beat Endgame. I'm just saying I have changed my mind from thinking it was impossible to now looking at it a little bit more objectively and going, you know what? If the winds are at their back and all the dominoes fall in place, I think it very well could. I think it is possible. Now, again, there's so much right now we don't know. Number one, we don't know how the films leading up to Doomsday are going to do, both quality-wise and with the audience. We don't know yet. As of right now, other than Captain America, we really don't know who's going to be in the Avengers by the time we get to Avengers Doomsday. Right? Look, there are a ton of questions that have to be answered. Absolutely. And our thoughts on how big and successful Doomsday and Secret Wars can be may be different 7 or 8 months from now than they are today. I'm just saying today, where we are right now, August 25th, 2024, with the limited information that we do have, I'm saying it's possible. Maybe I'll think differently a year from now. Maybe I'll think differently 8 months from now. But from where I'm sitting right now, I think it's possible. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what will happen. Can Marvel pick up on this momentum? Maybe yes, maybe no. We'll find out as we go. Okay, guys. With that all down, let's now get on to the real reason why we are here, is to take your live comments and questions, the ones that I, like an idiot, did not just up and delete from yesterday, but rather the ones you guys have sent in today. So let's get things going here, shall we? Hopefully this will work for me. And it does. Okay, so we're going to start off with NK, who writes, I was also in Vegas this weekend. Nice. For our fantasy football draft. Anne's got her big fantasy football draft tomorrow. So you're right about how convenient it is to get around. Hopefully San Diego Comic-Con moves there. Yeah, listen, I never cease to be amazed by how fabulous Las Vegas is for holding massive events and how easy it is to get around in Las Vegas. It's absolutely crazy. But yeah, Ann and I were in Vegas this weekend. We stayed at the MGM Grand because our new favorite restaurant is there. It's called the International Smokehouse. It's Steph Curry's wife, Aisha Curry, owns it. And it's like now our favorite restaurant in Vegas. We actually ate there twice. We had dinner there on Friday night and we had dinner there on Saturday night. That's how much we liked it. Anyway, hope you had a good time, NK. Next up, Isaac Martinez writes, hey, John. Heard about the death of Alain Delon. He was one of the best French actors in the business. Loved him in Les Samouraïs. Rest well, Alain. I'm going to be very, very honest with you. The name, maybe if I saw his face, I'd know who we're talking about, but I'm just going to be on. I could fake it and pretend it. Oh yeah, he was a fabulous actor. I could fake it, but I'm not going to fake it. I'm not sure who the gentleman is. But whenever somebody who has contributed to the industry and to the art passes away, that's always a sad day. So I'm glad you brought it up, Isaac. Thank you for doing that. All right. Next up, we got Buck's Basement writes, lots of great actors appearing in One Piece Season 2. Aside from David, they got Katie Sagal, who is, of course, in Married with Children and one of my all-time favorite shows, Sons of Anarchy. Charithra Bridgerton, a girl from Bridgerton. Okay. Joe Manganiello. Oh, I didn't know Joe Manganiello. And Sholo Mariduena from Blue Beetle. I didn't know Joe was in that. Listen, I'm not big on anime shows. I tried watching One Piece, the animated show, because so many of our viewers told me, John, I think you'll love One Piece. And I watch it and it's not for me. I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'm just saying it wasn't for me. That's all. Fair enough? All right. But then the Netflix series, the live action series came out. And again, a few of our viewers wrote into me and said, you should check out the live action series. So begrudgingly I did. And you know what? I really liked the live series. I'm not going to say it's one of my top 5 favorite shows of the year or anything, but I was delighted by the One Piece live action series, Season 1. And I'm looking forward to Season 2, and it's great seeing how many of these great people are coming in for it. All right. Next up, we got Mr. I, who writes, hey, John, hope you had a great trip. Did you start the brawl at the Raiders game by saying Canadians have bigger schlongs? And what metric did they use in the study? LOL, bring on the filthy. Okay. So what Mr. I is referring to is, number one, Ann and I did indeed go to the, we didn't plan on, we were just in Vegas. And while we were there, we found out that, oh, the 49ers are playing the Raiders in a preseason game at Allegiant Stadium. Let's go over and watch the game. So we just ran over and watched the game. It was a lot of fun. No, we did not start any fight. But here's Ann. That's us at the Raider game. And Allegiant's a beautiful stadium. Anne is a bit of a Raiders fan. She's more of a Bengals fan, but she also really likes the Raiders. So we were there at the game. But anyway, what he's referring to is that as we were driving back from Vegas, Anne found this study made using Google data that showed, and I will read my post, that according to Google data, Canadian men rank number 12 in the world in average penis size. For comparison, the USA ranked number 59. Canada. So, yes. So that is what Mr. I is referring to. So go Canada. Better in healthcare, better in education, better in quality of life, and better in sure power of the magnificence. That's right. So go number 12. Go number 12. That's what Mr. I is referring to. All right. Anyway, I don't know why I felt the need to share that. Okay. Next up, we got Christopher Brickner, who writes, 2019, Lion King grossed $1.663 billion. Inside Out was 2 was at 1.63 billion last week and is now at 1.64 billion. Do you think Inside Out 2 will pass 2019's Lion King? I don't. I still don't think it will. I think next week it still needs to make another $10 million. This past weekend, it made like 2 something million. I don't now, but it is totally within striking distance. It's totally within striking distance. It can do it. It's possible. I don't think it will, but it is possible that it could do it. Hope we will find out for sure. I think by the end of next weekend, we'll know for sure whether it does or doesn't. All right. Next up, Disgraceful Entertainment writes, shout out to Nigel McGinness for returning to in-ring competition at All In today. That's AEW's All In. Man, again, so proud of the guy. It's a long road for him to get back there. And how amazing does that look in Wembley Stadium? That looked pretty incredible. All right. Let's see. Bobby Jackson writes, finished watching Horizon on Max, and I enjoyed it. Too long to sit in the theater to watch, so I broke it up in chunks at home. Too bad they didn't just release it as a series on streaming. Little expensive to release as a streaming thing on streaming. I'm not sure how many people would watch it anyway. It seemed like a lot of people were just kind of mad at Kevin Costner for leaving Yellowstone and the drama, whether that criticism is fair or unfair. But I still haven't watched it. And I will, though. I will, because I am a Kevin Costner fan. I really do. I love Kevin Costner. So I will watch it at some point. But I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. I'm glad. I don't know that they do 3 and 4 like Kevin is still saying they're going to do it, but we'll have to wait and see. But I'm glad you had a good time with it, Bobby, and I'm probably check it out myself at some point here. All right. Fire Up the Blades sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Fire Up the Blades. Appreciate that, man. And Fire Up the Blades writes, Toxic Avenger remake on Rotten Tomato holds a 92% based on 24 reviews. A report came out saying it's hard to market and unreleasable. Has positive reviews, stars, niche audience. So what are the factors that makes a film unreleasable? Every movie will be different in terms of what will make it releasable or unreleasable. There's no one size fits all thing to all of that. Now you got to keep in mind, okay, it's got a 92% review, but who reviewed it? Were there people who were already predisposed? Again, I don't know the answers to these questions. I'm just throwing this out there. But there are definitely movies we have seen and you have seen that maybe nobody else went to go see. And you go, yeah, this was never going to work in theaters. This was never going to work. I'll be honest with you. You put out a movie called The Toxic Avengers, nobody's going to go to see it. No one's going to go see it. I'll go see it. James Gunn will go see it. Maybe you'll go see it. But basically nobody else is. Now, it all depends on how they make the movie. How inside baseball do they make it? That maybe a certain percentage of people would appreciate and really like, but maybe another percentage try to make trailers out of it. No one's going to go watch it. And then I don't know what the budget to it is either. Like, I don't know. Is it a $2 million budget? Is it a $40 million budget? I don't know what it is. I don't know. Sir Malstrom just brought up a great point too in the live chat. Just think about the live action Pinocchio. I mean, you look at that. There's no way that ever should have gone to theaters, right? So yeah, just because you get a few people liked it and you got some recognizable names in it, you know what a good example of that is? Let me see if I can bring this up and see if I can find this. Do you guys remember that movie called Mother? You remember that? Had Jennifer Lawrence in it. Had Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, and why am I forgetting who directed it? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Now I gotta check this out. Because it's a famous director, and now I'm freezing on who the director. Darren Aronofsky directed it. That was a great example of, hey, you had, by the way, I thought Mother was terrible. I thought that movie was awful. I thought it was clearly made by an artist who had great vision, but as a watchable experience kind of a movie, I thought it was absolutely dreadful. But I think there were a lot of people who liked it. Actually, I cannot remember. I'm going to look up the Rotten Tomatoes, but I thought a bunch of people liked it. I think at least half the critics liked it. And yeah, it's got almost a 70%, 68%. So, I mean, there were critics who liked it, had big name stars in it, had a big director in it, a big director running it. But it's a movie you can't sell it to people, and it flopped. It flopped. And that might be what we're looking at with the Toxic. Again, I'm not saying that because I haven't seen the new Toxic Avenger. So this isn't me. I'm just from the outside looking and saying maybe that's the type of situation that distributors are looking at and saying, hey, that's really a cool, fun thing you made, but I don't think we can sell this to an audience. And like I said, Fired Up, that will be what makes a movie like that will be different from movie to movie. You know, a lot of the distributors, a lot of the studios are saying the same thing about the new Francis Ford Coppola movie, Megalopolis. They're saying it's not going to sell. Like, we're not going to be able to sell. We're not going to be able to get large numbers of audience to this. And I'm sure that's for very different reasons than for Toxic Avenger. So we'll see. We'll find out. All right, good question though, Fired Up. Next up, Big Mouth Stan writes, I find it comical that the only two appearances of the Fantastic Four characters in the MCU so far ended with horrific deaths, especially Johnny Storm's. Yeah, because of course we had one variant of Reed Richards being played by John Krasinski in Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, and he had a horrific death. And the Johnny Storm death in Deadpool and Wolverine was so shocking and so out of nowhere and so grotesque. Like, she literally just ripped the skin off him. Oh my God. So you're right. I didn't even think about that. But the two appearances of Fantastic Four characters so far in the MCU have both ended in very horrific deaths. All right. Abe 10 Alpha writes, the NFL regular season is almost here. I cannot wait. What are you most looking forward to? For me, I'm interested in how the Chargers will perform with their new head coach and finally see Aaron Rodgers play. I think Aaron Rodgers is not going to make that big of a difference for the New York Jets, to be honest with you. Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers is huge, but here's the big concern for the Chargers. You got this hotshot young quarterback who's already injured. And while I think he has all the potential in the world, I got to see if he's going to be able to put it together. The thing I am looking forward to the most this season is watching the human cheat code play. Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion, is the most exciting, dynamic, best all-round football player that we've seen in years. I remember when they traded Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers, I was just like, dude, that's just not fair. And if it wasn't for one massive coaching mistake call that they made in that game, they would have beat the Chiefs and they would have gone on and probably won the Super Bowl. That aside. Yeah, man, just watching Christian McCaffrey play. He can do all the little things. He can block, he can chip, he's an excellent receiver, and he's the best running back in the game. He is just the best all-round football player in the NFL right now. And he's electrifying to watch play football. You know, there's a few guys like that. There's not many guys like that in the NFL, but there's a few of them. You know, Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, Christian McCaffrey in the 49ers. Why am I freezing the name on the kid, the second-year quarterback for the Texans? Why am I suddenly freezing on the kid's name? Guys in the live chat, if you remember his name, go ahead and throw it in there. But there's not many of them that are just that purely electric. CJ Stroud, thank you guys. And then you never know what the hell Patrick Mahomes is going to do. So, yeah, there's a number of things I'm really looking forward to this season. All right. Thanks, Abe. Next up, David Cushmore writes, Alien Romulus is done. What's next for Alien? Are they going to make Alien versus Predator 3 next? Well, they did. Listen, the director, Fede Alvarez, we talked about this on the John Campea Show last week. Fede Alvarez mentioned that, yeah, he'd totally be down for doing an AVP, an Alien versus Predator, if he and the director of Prey, Dan Trachtenberg, teamed up and directed it together. Prey was awesome. Alien Romulus was awesome. If those two guys got together and co-directed an Alien versus Predator, I would be totally down. But also don't forget, we got that Alien TV series coming to Hulu as well. I don't know if that's going to be any good, but we've got that coming too. So it looks like there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the world of aliens and predators. All right. Next up, Devin Lida writes, I watched Longlegs Friday and Alien Romulus Saturday. Needless to say, I'm surprised I had no nightmares of Nick Cage banging his head on the table and xenomorph tongues. Bring on the filthy birds. I'm going to be honest with you. I'll be the odd one out. I didn't think Longlegs was great. I know there's a lot of you guys that loved Longlegs, and I heard so many good things about Longlegs, and I love Nick Cage. So I went into Longlegs pretty excited, and while it's certainly a very, very interesting movie, they do some things very, very, very well, but I don't think it's as smart as it thinks it is, and I don't know. I didn't hate the movie. I don't think it's like one of the worst movies of the year. No, nothing like that. But for me, it just didn't live up. It just did not live up to what I was kind of hoping out of it. But again, I didn't think it was I didn't think it was a bad movie. Don't get me wrong. But I was not as taken with it as a lot of other people were. But that's just me. Alien Romulus, on the other hand, far exceeded my expectations. Far exceeded my expectations. So really excited about that. All right. Next up. Thanks, Devin. We've got Adkin, who writes, I really love The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. I love the original one. What's the chances of a reboot after the bomb of Dragon Emperor and the Tom Cruise remake? Do you mean like a reboot of Brendan Fraser returning? Zero. No chance. I think, and I could be wrong about this, obviously, but I think for a very small window of time, and I'm talking about like leading into the Oscars where Brendan Fraser won his Oscar, and a very short window after he won his Oscar, I think there was an opportunity to announce Brendan Fraser returning to the world of The Mummy. I think in that small window of time, you could have announced that movie and it could have had some momentum and it could have had some excitement and it could have had some steam behind it. But honestly, all that momentum and all that steam I now think is gone. Not that Brendan Fraser is gone, but that there was that window where there was a lot of hype and there was actually movie fans out there asking for another Mummy movie. I think that was the time. That was their opportunity to announce a movie like that. But they didn't, and I think the time is gone. And again, I don't think they would be able to sell tickets to it. And yeah, now, is it impossible? Absolutely not. Probable at this point? Also probably not. All right, thanks for that ad, Kim. Jose XCI writes, how about UFC 305? Dan Hooker was amazing. DDP 2. By the way, I've always liked Dan Hooker. I am not watching UFCs right now. I'm not going to watch UFCs until after I think the US presidential election is over. And here, I mentioned this on the show the other day. I'll say it again here. I have no problem with Dana White, the individual, the person, Dana White, wanting to use his own personal social media to promote his political ideologies and stuff like that. I got no problem with that. I have no problem with a Dana White showing up to the Republican National Convention and being one of the people to give an address. I have zero issue with that. I think that's perfectly fine for Dana White as the individual to go and do that. I myself, I will express political thoughts, opinions, and points of view on my own personal media social channels, but I do not bring politics into my show. My show is not for furthering any political agenda. I'll talk about basic human decency and I'll talk about basic human equality, but you know, we don't endorse anybody on the John Campea Show. We don't bring any of that kind of stuff into it, whatever. Dana White started using the UFC as his own personal means of promoting his own political party and his own political ideology. And to me, that's different. Like, I'm okay if he wants to do that on his social media. Awesome. Get to be a keynote speaker at one of the big national political conventions, the RNC. Awesome. You go do that. That's incredible. But the moment that he uses the UFC as a vehicle to push his politics, I check out. And I'm like, yeah, just not now. It's not for me. So I'm a big UFC fan. I'm a big Dana White fan. Not of everything Dana White has done, obviously, but I mean, I'm super admire of the way he is, how successful he is and what he's done with his life and how he's kind of cultivated the UFC to becoming what it is today. But yeah, as long as there's a chance that, as long as he's using the UFC to just be a vehicle to promote his own political ideology, then I check out. Just like I would expect a lot of people to check out of the John Campea Show. I would expect a lot of people to check out of the John Campea Show. If they come to the John Campea Show looking for just good, fun movie discussion, because we're all movie fans, whether you're left, right, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever, it doesn't matter. We're all movie fans. I would expect that a lot of people, if I just started using the John Campea Show to promote one candidate over another, or just use the John Campea Show to just push a political ideology. Again, if you're a racist piece of shit, go fuck yourself. I don't care. And I know a lot of Republicans who would say if you're a racist piece of shit, you can go fuck yourself. So that's neither right nor left, Republican or Democrat. But I mean, we don't push political ideology. I may do it on my own personal social media channel, but that's my own personal social media channel. So yeah, I'm officially checked out of the USC. I'll still check the websites afterwards to see who won and maybe what happened in the fights. But as long as Dana White is using the UFC to push his own political ideologies, then I'm not going to be watching the UFC. So hopefully that'll all change after the presidential election. All right. Next up, we've got Bill's HQ, who says, I know I'm probably the only one wondering this, but what do you think happens with the Russo brothers produced live action remake of Hercules? I'll be honest with you, I don't even know if it's still happening. Because that was like, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that like announced 3 years ago? Wasn't that announced like 3 years ago? Okay, that being said, it's very possible that, I mean, the Russo brothers are going to be producing the new Hercules movie. They may not have had much involvement with it. Like, there are producers of a movie, and then there are the producers of a movie. The producer of a movie does a lot of work on the film, works on it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for forever. But then there are like 10 or 12 other producers on a film who are producing the film that they literally had nothing to do with it. And so I don't know, number one, if this movie's even still happening, but I don't think it'll be impacted by whether by the Russo brothers now working on Doomsday and Secret Wars, because I don't know how involved they were going to be in Hercules. Remember, somebody else was going to direct Hercules, so I don't really know. But anyway, I don't even know if that movie's still happening, but I don't think it has anything to do with Secret Wars or Doomsday, because again, the Russos weren't directing it, they were producing it. All right. Next up, Big Mel Stan writes, did you see that Dennis Quaid said that Facebook was censoring efforts to promote his new Reagan film? If so, what are your thoughts on the situation? I don't believe that for a second. Not with all the stuff I've seen promoted on Facebook. I don't believe that for a second. I know there's a lot of people who will cry foul about a lot of stuff, but 90% of the time when people cry foul, it's usually about nothing. But yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe that's true for 1 second. Now, if it is true, then there probably is a specific thing or a rule or a guideline that they broke in doing it. And as long as they just fix that, it'll probably be fine. But I don't buy that for a second. All right, next up. David Cushmore writes, do you like the new college football playoff format to 12 teams? Do you think Michigan or Ohio State gets in? I'll be honest with you. I mean, first of all, I loved that they moved to a college playoff system. Let the national champion be determined on the field. I like that they did that. I don't know if 12 teams, you know what I thought? Here's what I thought. I thought they should have expanded it to maybe 6. Where you would had the number 1 and number 2 seeded teams get automatic buys. And then seeds 3, 4, 5, and 6 play each other. And then the lowest ranked remaining team plays the number 1 ranked team. And the highest ranked team out of the 4 goes on to play the number 2 ranked team. I think an expansion to 6 would have been good. Maybe even 8. I think 12 might be a little much, But I'm excited to see how play. Look, it's going to make for a very exciting playoff season, though. So we'll see how it turns out. All right, next up. Richard Lai writes, Joker 2 may not be a billion, but I think the box office gross would be between 8 and 900 million, which is the higher than most of the DCEU films. Thoughts? Well, I've been saying that forever. I don't think Joker 2 is going to be a $1 billion film. I think it's going to be a very successful film. I think it's going to make a lot of money, but I don't think it's going to be a $1 billion film. So I'm pegging it somewhere between $600 and $800 million. Again, much bigger than most of the DCEU films ever were. Surely, I mean, if Joker makes over $700 million, that's one of the, I mean, you know how many filmmakers will never make a movie over $700 million? Do you know how many actors will never be in a movie that makes over $700 million? It'll be huge. But again, I don't think it's going to be $1 billion, but I'm going to peg it in the $600 to $800 million range. Now, that prediction will change once I see the movie. If the movie is like absolutely mind-blowingly amazing, I may go higher. If the movie doesn't really work and isn't as good as the first, I may go lower. But for now, I'm going to say somewhere between 600 and 800 million. All right. See, John 1913B writes, thoughts on the new Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy? No idea what it is. Never heard of it. No idea what it is. Sorry, John. I just got to be honest with you. I have no idea what we're talking about, so I can't give an opinion on it. All right. Joker Fan 45 says, the plot for Shane Akers' canceled Thomas the Tank Engine film was revealed. How does it make you feel when fans complain about major changes to a story that already had an established lore? Dumb. I think it's dumb. But I get it. We get precious about things, right? To me, look, I've said this before. It's a very unpopular thing for me to say, but it's often lonely being right because it's absolutely the truth. The number one responsibility of a filmmaker is not to make something as close to the source material as possible. The number one job of a filmmaker is to make the best movie possible. And again, I just point out a lot of things. One of the greatest comic book movies of all time, X-Men Days of Future Past. Hardly anything like the actual comic book storyline. They took so many liberties. Age of Ultron, Civil War, nothing like the Civil War in the comic book. Nothing like it. Other than the fact that you had superheroes fighting superheroes, nothing else was similar. It was fundamentally different. They made tons of changes to it, and yet it is celebrated as one of the greatest comic book movies of all time by many people. Some people believe it is the greatest comic book movie of all time. Even Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. A lot of people today don't remember this, but when Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings came out, there was a big contingent of J.R.R. Tolkien fans that were very miffed and pissed at the movies because Peter Jackson took so many creative liberties with that movie. You think Liv Tyler's character was in that particular situation? Where the hell is Tom Bombadil? Do you know that this never happened in the books? It was actually, you know what? Even in Parks and Rec, one of my all-time favorite comedy shows, there's a scene where one of the main characters, I'm forgetting what's the name of the character who ends up with Leslie? It's not Chris, is it? No, Chris is Rob Lowe's character. Guys, help me out. What's the guy's name who ends up with Leslie? Ben Wyatt. Thank you, Casinema. So, Ben Wyatt in it is a big nerd in the show, right? And the guy, I bet you just want to go home and watch Lord of the Rings or something. He goes, actually, you know what? I'm not particularly fond of Peter Jackson's interpretation of the books, But a lot of people today forget that Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings took some pretty big liberties. Also very, very similar in many ways to the original source material, but also took several huge liberties with it. But who cares? Who cares? Peter Jackson's job was not to make movies as close to the source material as possible, although I'm sure he did where he could. His job was to make the best movies possible, and he did. Some people think some of the greatest movies of all time. So when people get upset and get precious and start clutching their pearls, and I say that as somebody who's been guilty of it myself, I admit it. I've been guilty of this myself. I just roll my eyes a bit. I still remember back when the greatest television show of all time, Ronald Moore's Battlestar Galactica. Obviously, that's up for debate, but to me, it's easily, singularly, the greatest television show ever. But I remember before that show came out, and it got announced that Katie Sackhoff was playing Starbuck. And, ooh, did people get their tight little panties all sucked up in their buttholes, and they were so mad before the show ever came out. And, you know, maybe the show could have turned out badly, but you know what? And I was a big fan of the original Battlestar. I grew up watching the original. I was a little kid, but I grew up watching the original Battlestar Galactica. So I was also kind of like, hey, come on now. Where's Dirk Benedict? Starbuck is what? Okay, so whatever. But I thought, you know what? I'll just see how good the show is. Is the show good? Does the change work? See, that should be the first question that fandoms ask. And I say this as a member of many fandoms. The first question we in fandom should be asking is, does the change work? Instead of getting all prissy about that there's a change, why don't we just go, okay, well, let's see how it turns out. Because in the case of Battlestar Galactica, the result was the greatest television show of all time. In the case of Civil War, one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. In the case of Days of Future Past, one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. What I'm saying is, sticking to source material doesn't make it good. Changing source material doesn't make it good. Wait to see how well it works. So when I see a fandom start crying and boo-hoo, and again, I've been guilty of this. I'm mocking myself here a bit. When I see members of fandoms going, boo-hoo, they're making a change from the original. You know what? Instead of boo-hooing about it, just go, okay, they're making a change. Not thrilled with that, but let's see how it works. And if it works, great. And if not, we'll give you a hard time about it later. But for now, let's see if it works. And I personally think that should be the attitude of fandoms when it comes to finding out that a movie based on pre-existing source material is going to take some liberties and make changes. They all do. But just take a breath and say, let's see how it works. Anyway, that's my opinion on that, Joker fan. All right, next up. Andy writes, one of two. Carry On My Wayward Son by Kansas was playing while Kansas State cast their votes at the DNC. Misha Collins was there on his birthday of all days, and he said, holy hell, I can't get away. Even the DNC is turning it into a supernatural convention. You know what's funny? I saw that, by the way. I thought it was a really neat, creative thing to do where, like, when Minnesota, because, you know, historically at the Republican national conventions, the Democratic national conventions, they do a roll call of the individual states and, you know, who their electoral votes or who their delegate votes are going for and all that kind of stuff. It's tradition at the conventions. What they did at the DNC was pretty creative, in the sense that when it was Kansas's turn, they played a song by Kansas. When it was Minnesota's turn, they had John Legend come out and sing a Prince song. Of course, Prince was from Minnesota. When California did theirs, they had the, California, California, dun, 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 playing. I thought it was a pretty creative thing to do. Did it mean anything? Absolutely not. But whenever I get a chance to hear Carry On My Wayward Son by Kansas, because it reminds me so much of Supernatural, it always puts a smile on my face. All right. Next up, Billy B writes, I never expected to see James Spader as Ultron again. My interest in Vision Quest has exponentially increased. I forgive you for losing my super chat. Thank you, Billy. That's very, very generous of you. That's very nice of you to forgive me for losing the super chat. And again, I do apologize to that for that happening to everybody. Let me put it this way. I love James Spader, and I love him as the voice of Ultron. If they had said Ultron was going to be a part of Vision Quest, but somebody else was doing the voice, that wasn't going to change the quality of the show. But I am also pretty... Now, we're going to talk more about that. I'm not going to go too much into it right now, but I'm going to talk more about the James Spader coming back as Ultron on tomorrow's John Campea Show. So I'll leave it at that. But I see Rachel Knight online saying Age of Ultron sucked. I disagree. You know what? Age of Ultron is one of those movies. I remember me and Schnepp and Rob and I still talk about this. It's one of those movies to me that gets better every time I watch it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's on Civil War level. I'm not saying it's on the original Avengers level. I'm not saying it's on, Winter Soldier level. I'm not saying that. But you know what? Every time I watch that movie, I go, you know what? This is even better than I remember. And there's some really, really amazing. I still think one of my favorite things ever in the MCU is the brief love story that they started to tell between Black Widow and Dr. Banner. And there's this moment where Natasha, Black Widow, she said, I'm probably butchering the line a little bit, but it's one of my favorite lines ever in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's in Age of Ultron. When she says, I've always known all these guys, because she's kind of expressing that, hey, I'm kind of into you, Bruce. And she's expressing I've always known all these guys, and forgive me if I'm misquoting this, but she goes, I've known all these guys who are always ready to run into the fight. But then I meet this guy who runs away from the fight because he knows he'll win. I've always been surrounded by these guys who are ready to run into the fight. But then I meet this guy who runs away from the fight because he knows he'll win. And in that moment, see, that's what great dialogue does. Because when they were starting to hint that she was into Bruce, I was like everybody else in the world of thinking she would not be into him. She's Black Widow. She's not going to be into the scrawny, nerdy guy, right? But then when she said that one line of dialogue, I've known all these guys who will run into a fight, but then I meet this guy who runs away from the fight because he knows he'll win. All of a sudden, I just went, now I get it. That's what great dialogue in a movie does. And I was like, I totally see it. Now I went from going, she would never be into him, to be like, she would so be in love with him. She would so be in love with him. That's what great dialogue does. Anyway, I'm just saying, I don't think it's one of the best MCU movies, but I personally, my appreciation for Age of Ultron just grows every time I see it. Anyway, that's a little side note there. All right. Thanks for that. Next up, we got Isaac Sanchez writes, I forgive you, John. Thank you. I appreciate that. We all make mistakes, but what matters is that you're still the John Campea. You're still a great friend. Oh, thank you, Isaac. I appreciate that. And again, my appreciation to everybody in the live chat who's been very gracious with me after my mistake of deleting that video with the questions. So sorry about that. So thank you for that, Isaac. I appreciate it. All right. Risky Pins writes, just watch Deadpool and Wolverine during Wade's birthday party. In the background, you can hear the song Just Call Me Angel in the Morning. Really? You know what? I've seen the movie 5 times. Yes, I know it's been 5 for a while now. Ann and I, we still want to see it 4 more times, but I don't think I've ever noticed that. I don't think I've ever noticed that, Risky Pins, but you know what? Next time I'm going to go see it, I'm going to be laser focused on that scene now, and I'm just going to totally listen for it. Thank you for putting that on my radar. I appreciate that. All right, Casinema writes, when RDJ was announced as Doom, they never explained what was with all the other Dooms on stage. Best guess is those were meant to be Doom bots. I'll be honest with you. I thought about it too. And then now, you know what I think? Here's what I think now. I think we were all overthinking it. I think we're all just overthinking it. Do I think there will be Doom bots in Doomsday? Yes. Why? Because that other version of him, that Tony version of him, made his own Iron Army, right? So Doom bots makes sense. But do I think that's what they were representing on stage when he came out and did his whole thing? I don't think he was. I don't think he was. I think that was just that was just the presentation. All these guys dressed as Doom, but then one emerges out and it's Robert Downey Jr. So I thought the exact same thing too. But the more I think about it, the more I think we were all overthinking it. I honestly don't think it meant anything. Although I do expect to see Doombots in there, Casinema, I really do. All right. Kevin Frazier writes, you're a class act, John, nothing but respect. Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. That's very generous of you to write that and just be supportive. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that, dude. All right. The Vegetable Addict writes, I watch the main show at work every day at lunch and loved it since the Star Wars sequel days. Thank you for being there for me. You put a much needed smile on my face while I'm at work. Aw, dude, thank you so much. Here's the funny thing though, Vegetable Addict. It's always been funny to me. Ever since I did the movie blog and the world's first movie podcast called the Movie Blog Audio Edition, it's always been funny to me how many people tell me that they either watch and or listen to the show at work. I've always thought that was funny. I think it's great, but I always think it's funny. It's like, hopefully you're not a surgeon and you're watching me talk, going some rant about AMC playing too many trailers before a movie while you're trying to do surgery on somebody. But I mean, I've always thought it was fun when people tell me they watch the show at work. So anyway, Vegetable Addict, thank you so much for that. I appreciate you. Thank you for being part of our community. And thank you for the kind words, man. All right. Generic Man writes, with so many open-ended threads left open in post-credit scenes throughout the MCU since No Way Home, do you think they'll have to let some go unresolved? Yes. Listen, I think for the most part, there have been some exceptions, obviously. But I mean, I don't think post-credit scenes, most of them, were ever meant to be major, significant narrative influx points. Right? That changes the direction of the MCU or a story. I mean, pardon me, guys. Still got, again, this post-viral cough is just kicking my ass. Anyway. Oh, Chester 8DC just gifted a membership. Thank you, Chester. It's very nice of you, man. I think most of them are just meant to be fun. I mean, look, end of the first Avengers movie, right? Tony goes back to his apartment and Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury's there and says, I want to talk to you about the Avengers initiative. Okay. But is the MCU different at all in any way if that post-credit scene wasn't there? Seriously, think about it. If that post-credit scene wasn't there, Iron Man 2 still happens just the way it was, right? I think the same is true of a lot. Now, there have been a couple of very meaningful, consequential post-credit scenes, but I think they're in the minority. So, yeah, I think a lot of them they can just let go. Like, for instance, the introduction of Star Fox at the end of Eternals. Was that a big moment? Like, if people are in the theater going, whoa, Harry Styles is Star Fox. Okay. But did it really mean anything? Would it change anything if it hadn't been there? I don't think so. Even the post-credit scene in Doctor Strange 2. So I think for the most part, they can let most of them go because ultimately, I think for the most part, they really don't have a ton of importance. There are some exceptions, but I think for the most part, they don't really have a ton of importance. All right. Next up, Richard Lai writes, I don't think Warner Brothers and DCU will gain those applause. Let me try this again. I don't think WB and DCU will gain those applause like MCU, at least until they make a proper great Justice League film. Superman and Batman isn't enough to get hype. You're 1,000% wrong. You're 1,000% wrong. One film, great film. Case in point, the first Iron Man. The first Iron Man. I mean, that's, look, are they going to have a film that's as big as Endgame? No. Marvel's not, the MCU's not going to have an individual movie as big as Endgame that's not called Avengers. I'm not saying that, but can the DCU, the new DCU, gain significant excitement and momentum from one great film that isn't called Justice League? 1,000% they can. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying they can. Right? You put out an awesome Superman movie and you follow that up with an awesome Batman movie that the critics and audience and box office loves. Oh, hell, the momentum, you build all the momentum in the world. And if you disagree, then you're not remembering what happened around the time that the first Iron Man movie came out. Because the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as it was just, they're doing an Iron Man movie who was a B-level character at best, with that washed up Robert Downey Jr. Again, if you think that sounds weird, then you're not old enough to remember what it was at that time. I mean, I did love the casting. I wrote articles about why I thought the casting of Robert Downey Jr. was great, but still, for the most part, it was, an Iron Man movie being directed by the guy who did Elf, and that dude has been arrested a bunch of times and kind of destroyed his own career, sabotaged his own career a few times. Okay. And then Iron Man came out. And it set the tone. It came out of the gate. It won everybody. All of a sudden, everybody was excited about what this Marvel Cinematic Universe was going to be. Was it their biggest movie? No. But everybody was excited about what the Marvel Cinematic Universe movie could be after that one movie. Now, yes, Avengers came out, took it to another level. Absolutely. But if you don't think that that could happen, I'm not saying will. If you don't think that could happen with a massive success Superman or Batman, I don't know what to tell you. My film loving brother, I don't know what to tell you, because I think, yes, it absolutely can. And the reason we know it can is because we've seen it happen before. So we know it can. We 100% know it can. So we'll see. We'll see. All right. Now, whether it will, Richard, that's another question altogether. Okay. Thanks for the question, Richard. Alex Gollum writes, one of two. Hey, John, I'm so excited about Rings of Power Season 2. Trailers and marketing campaign have been spectacular. They've shown the season has potential. Look, it's been a long... I think other than Shogun, I don't know that there has been a TV show that I've been more excited to see than when season 1 of Rings of Power was coming out. Like, I was beside myself, straight up beside myself, with how excited I was for it. By the way, before I keep going, I should answer part 2. That was part 1 of 2. Alex also goes on to write, to be great. Listen to Golden Leaves sung by Gil Galad. It's awesome. Benjamin can sing. McCreary killing it with season 2 soundtrack. Again, I was ridiculously hyped for years about Rings of Power season 1. And while I think it was okay, there are some really great things about it. There are some really terrible things about it. While I still think the show was okay, it was an incredible disappointment for me. I thought the first episode was so bad, I nearly tapped out of watching the series because after watching the first episode, I came this close to tapping out. I finished the series and I'm glad that I did, but for me, season 1 was still quite a disappointment. And I confess, I have not had hardly any excitement about season 2. Just being honest with you. I have had almost zero enthusiasm. I mean, I've always known I would watch it when season 2 comes out, but I have felt very, very little enthusiasm for it. But give credit where it is due. The trailers, particularly that one that came out of Comic-Con, for Rings of Power Season 2, have been on an entirely different level than what we got from Season 1. Now, we've all seen great trailers to terrible shows and movies. And maybe that's the case here. So I'm not ready to say, oh, Season 2 is going to be awesome. I'm not ready to say that. But I do have to say, whereas I had no enthusiasm for Season 2 before, these trailers for Rings of Power Season 2, they've given me some enthusiasm again. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So again, will the show end up being good, Season 2? I don't know yet. I'm not ready to believe it one way or the other, but I will admit that those trailers have gotten me excited again, something I have not felt since the ending of Season 1. All right, thanks a lot for that, Alex. Next up, Isaac Sanchez writes, with summer break over, what did you do during summer break? Also, I've been hearing some live chat people saying that you're retiring in the future. If that's true, then who will take over your show? I didn't really have a summer break. That's just part of the reality. Summer is actually when, summer movie season is and we got Comic-Con and all that kind of stuff. I don't really take a lot of breaks during the summer. Yes, I am retiring. I still don't know exactly when, but as I've been saying for about a year now, that the most likely target range when I'm retiring is somewhere between the release of the new Superman movie, so summer of 2025, and the end of 2025. So that's the general target area that I'm aiming for. Hey, listen, maybe I decide to to pull the plug a little bit earlier. Probably not, but maybe I do. Maybe I decide to do it a little bit after that. Probably not, but that's the general window that I'm aiming for. As far as who takes over the show, nobody. I shut the show down. Nobody else can do the John Campea Show because it's called the John Campea Show. Now, that said, and remember, this is all still a long ways off. This is still ages away. But there is a possibility that maybe I could find somebody to take over my show and we change the name of the show, and maybe I continue to own my show. Maybe I continue to own this show and just have somebody else be the host of it and we change the title of it. Maybe I shut it down. Maybe I sell the show to somebody. I mean, I don't know. To be 100% honest with you, I have not given that part a lot of thought, almost any thought. It is most certainly not going to be the Ray Show. But I honestly, I'll give that more thought maybe once we get into 2025. I'll start thinking about that. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But right now I would say the most likely scenario is that I just shut the show down. I will probably just shut the show down. Again, not 100% sure, just saying probably right now. And then I will continue to probably do once or twice a week audio podcasts, just for fun, because they're easy and they're fun to do. But anyway, yeah, there's that. All right. Next up, we've got Big Mouth Stan writes, is Ryan Reynolds or Hugh Jackman more likely to make a cameo in Secret Wars? Ryan Reynolds, and it's not a cameo. I think Ryan Reynolds, again, I have no insider information of this. This is just me guessing. I think Ryan Reynolds will be a key cast member of Secret Wars, in as much as any Avenger will be. And right now, I don't think Hugh Jackman is coming back. I don't know that. It's very possible that he could. I'm just guessing like any other fan. So it's just a guess. But I really do think Deadpool and Wolverine was one last goodbye for Hugh Jackman. I don't think he's come back to do it again. I really don't think he's coming back. Again, I have no proof of that. I don't know that. Hugh Jackman hasn't called me to tell me, John, I'm done playing Wolverine. I don't know. Maybe if he could be back. Hell, he could be back in Captain America 4 for all I know. I don't know. But honestly, I don't think he's coming back. I think the amount of work he has to do at his age, especially. I mean, my God, like I'm younger than Hugh Jackman. And I've got to work out hard just to stay fat. Okay? But at Hugh Jackman's age, like when he talks about it, he goes, he said he doesn't want to do it anymore. The sheer amount and the way he has to eat and the sheer amount that he has to work out and all that kind of stuff, I don't think he wants to have to do that to his body anymore. And guys, listen, the older you get, once you get past like 45, doing that gets harder and harder and harder and harder. And so, again, that's why I don't think he'll be back. Again, he could, but I don't think he will. So 100%, I think the more likely out of the two of them is absolutely Ryan Reynolds. All right. Thanks for that, Big Mouth. Next rat. MK Matt writes, hey, John, seen the War of the Rohirrim trailer? I did. I didn't love it. I heard really, really good things about it. I've heard amazing things coming out of the animation festival circuit, that the movie's really good. I've heard it's very good. So I was excited to see the trailer. And again, I'm not saying the trailer was bad. Don't get me wrong. Don't misinterpret me. I'm not saying the trailer was bad. I think I was expecting more from the trailer, I guess. Again, that does not mean the movie won't be magnificent. Maybe it's the greatest animated movie of all time. I'm not saying it won't be. Maybe it will be. But yeah, I gotta say, I didn't love the trailer. And you know, that's fine. I've seen lots of trailers to movies that I didn't love the trailers and I ended up loving the movie. So it's no big deal. But yeah, to be honest with you, yeah, the trailer just didn't hit me as hard as I thought it would. But again, it's just a trailer. It's just a trailer. We'll see how it turns out. All right. Thanks for that, MK. Next up, Laura Howard sends in a $50 super chat. Laura, thank you so much for supporting us on that level. That's incredibly generous of you. And Laura writes, do think that it's possible that Scarlett Johansson can be urged to return as an alternate Black Widow to help fight Doom? I would not be surprised at all, to be honest with you. Especially now that Bob Iger's back. Let's just say Scarlett Johansson and Bob Chapek did not have the best relationship. She sued him in court. I think, man, it's hard for me to imagine who we won't see in Secret Wars. I 100% think Chris Evans is back. I 100% think not only is Robert Downey Jr. going to be Doom, I think in Secret Wars, I think we'll see Robert Downey Jr. as another Tony variant. Hell, I even think it's possible Andrew and Toby come back as their Spider-Man. I honestly think we could see like 40 to 50 characters in that movie. 40 to 50 characters in that movie. But no, I mean, Reed is saying, you say Hugh Jackman won't be back? No, but I don't think Hugh Jackman will be one of them because I don't think he'll do it. But again, he might. I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying my guess is he won't. But honestly, I'm thinking you could have 40 to 50 characters in that movie. I think they're going to bring everybody back in that they can. Obviously, there's some people they can't. But I mean, I think they're going to do everything in their power. And I think that includes Scarlett Johansson. Because Scarlett Johansson has a very good working relationship with Kevin Feige. She's producing a Marvel movie coming up here pretty soon. All that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think, yes. Again, it's just a guess. I have no insider information. My guess is, yes, I would guess that we will see Scarlett Johansson lore. In Secret Wars. I really do. Let's put it this way. I'll be surprised if she's not. I legit would be surprised if she's not. So, yeah, we'll see how that all goes. All right. Thanks for that, Lore. Next up, Red Arrow writes, if Feige kept his power during the Chapek era, what Marvel projects do you think we wouldn't have? Do you think the universe would be different? Yes. I also think, remember, that Marvel executive came out, that Marvel producer came out and publicly said that while they were under the Bob Chapek rule, the mandate at Marvel from the CEO, from Bob Chapek, was two different things. Number one, make as much as you can. And number two, make it as fast as you can. That's no longer a secret. That's been publicly stated by an executive at Marvel, that under Chapek, he directly gave them the mandate. Make as much content as you can, and you make it as fast as you can. We saw what one of the immediate changes was. Once Big Papa Iger came back and gave Kevin Feige back his authority, one of the first things Kevin Feige went, good, okay, Daredevil is not going the way we want it to go. Let's kill everything we've done on it so far. Let's go back and start again and do it the way I really want to do it. Because what we were doing wasn't working. Back in the day, Kevin Feige could do that. Under Bob Chapek, he couldn't do that. It's like, nope, just crank it out as fast as you can. Crank it out as fast as you can. Same thing happened with Captain America. He did the same thing with Captain America. You know what? Captain America is not going the way we envisioned it. It's not going the way we wanted it. Let's like reshoot 70% of the movie. Under Bob Chapek, they couldn't do that. As soon as Kevin Feige got his authority back, he was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back, we're going to do this, and blah, blah, blah. Now, what else could have happened? I mean, I don't know. I certainly think that Secret Invasion, at some point, Kevin Feige might have pulled the plug on it or gone back to the drawing board with it because that didn't work out so well. I think there's a couple. I think the Hawkeye series, the same thing. I think the Moon Knight series, the same thing. Whatever. So we'll never know what the answer truly is, but I definitely think, just like the way we did see big changes happen once he got his power back, I think there would have been a number of projects that either wouldn't have happened or would have had major changes done to them to bring them up to the quality level that they needed to be. All right. Last super chat question comes to us from Only Giovanni All the Time. And for those of you who don't know, my name is actually Giovanni. He writes, is that bad that the movie that I'm most excited is Frozen 3? The first movie was so nostalgia for me. Thoughts? You know what? I don't care what anybody says. I love the Frozen movies. Do I like them as much as Toy Story? No. Do I like them as much as a number of other films? No. I love Frozen, though. I think Frozen was great. By the way, Alex in the live chat just gifted a membership. Thank you, Alex. It's very generous of you, man. And I thought Frozen 2 was delightful. Into the unknown, into the unknown. Like, they had a really tall order to doing Frozen 2 to come up with a song that could be anywhere near as catchy as Let It Go from the first one. And that Into the Unknown song is awesome. It's a great song. Anyway, I am also very much looking forward to Frozen 3. I love those characters. I think they built a great world. I think that the magic of it and the music of it, and they're great. Now, look, am I as excited about it as, say, Moana 2? No. Am I as excited for Frozen 3 as I am for, say, a Toy Story 5? No. But I'm looking forward to Frozen as well. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, guys. You know what? I'm going to take a couple more minutes here. If you guys are watching live, do me a favor. If you have a question for me and you're just watching the live chat, look down into the live chat. I just put, make your question. If you have a question for me, I'll pull a couple of questions from the live chat. Start it in all capital letters saying question, : That way I know you're asking me a question. And we'll go from there. All right, Josh is asking question, is there a reason you're not interested in the Terrifier? Yeah, because it doesn't look interesting to me. MJV writes, question, did the Leafs get out of the first round this season? Yes. K. Nico writes, question, thoughts on The Boys prequel TV show announced at Comic-Con? Everything The Boys has done so far, seasons 1, 2, 3, Gen V has been awesome, so I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see what's going to happen. King Daddy Goat writes, will my 49ers ever win the Super Bowl again? I think there's a pretty decent chance they could win it this year. Chris Franco writes, would a Blade movie even make $500 million? With Mahershala Ali, it's possible. Maximal Literal writes, question, thoughts on Kite Man? Still have only seen the first 2 episodes. And I really like the first. This is not as good as Harley Quinn, but I think it's really good. So I'll look forward to watching more. Let's see. Question, Joker 2 $1 billion movie from Tinham 100. No, I've already said in the show, no, I don't think Joker 2 will be $1 billion film. K-Man writes, have you seen Horizon Chapter 1 yet? Nope, still haven't watched it yet. But now that it's on Max, I'm going to sit down and watch it here pretty soon. DMG writes, question, will there ever be a World War Hulk movie? I don't think so, especially not the way that the Russo brothers, I love the Russo brothers and I love what they've done in the MCU, with the one exception of how they kind of ruined the Hulk. So you can't do a World War Hulk movie with that Hulk. I just don't see how they do it. Let's see. Question, after 2 years, do you still think The Batman is better than The Dark Knight? Let's be fucking clear. I have never said that The Batman is better than The Dark Knight. Not once ever did I ever say that The Batman is better than The Dark Knight. I think The Batman is better than The Dark Knight Rises. I'll stand by that. I think Matt Reeves' The Batman is better than The Dark Knight Rises, but I've never, ever, ever said that The Batman is better than The Dark Knight. Ever. Let's see. Ariel K writes, question, moving back to Canada post-retirement. It's possible we may even move back to Canada prior to my retirement. I'm not making any announcements right now, but it's possible I may even do that before we retire. Jordy Duran writes, question, do you watch My Adventures with Superman? Nah, it looks silly to me. Again, I'm not saying it is silly because I haven't seen it, but it just looks silly to me, so I have no interest in watching it. Elvis C writes, this will be my last question because I'm coughing too much. Elvis C writes, question, are you excited for Skeleton Crew? I am ludicrously excited for Skeleton Crew. First of all, I always liked the sounds of it. Sounded pretty good. That trailer for Skeleton Crew was everything I wanted that trailer to be. Because I remember we had discussions about, if they can make this show in such a way that kind of captures the spirit of the Goonies and things like that era, those 80s kind of movies, and it captured the spirit of that. That trailer was fucking awesome. That trailer, I think it's the best trailer that came out of D23. I'm not kidding. I think the best trailer coming out of D23 was that trailer. I think it looks spectacular. I captured all the heart and the feelings of that era, of E.T., of the Goonies, of like all of that kind of wrapped into one package. I thought it was wonderful. Now, and by the way, it's being done by John Watts, the guy who did Far From Home, No Way Home, and Homecoming. He did all the Spider-Man movies. Why should we be surprised? I think it looks great. I cannot wait for it. So, yeah, I'm really, really stoked for it. And all right, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for being here and making this little show part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in the questions. Number one, because you gave us fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it. And all of us involved with the channel, thank you guys so much for your support. Again, my deepest apologies to everybody who had sent in super chats on the show we tried to do yesterday, and I, like an idiot, lost them. Tremendous apologies for that. I will try to make good for it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Don't forget, we got a big show for the John Campea Show tomorrow. A number of huge pieces of news have come out this weekend. Can't wait to talk about it. We'll talk to you tomorrow, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.